Association. That means Petaluma, that means Roner Park, which I just learned tonight, that means Cotati, that means Santa Rosa, and most importantly, the Deputy Sheriff's Association. I say that because their president, Bill Fauché, is here. They've all lost confidence because they're supporting me after 2 terms. Why aren't these law enforcement officials standing behind the incumbent? There's a loss of confidence. The same is true of the sheriff. He has come out and publicly endorsed me. What's going on? Well, there's turnover in that office. It's been continuing throughout the years. Over 50% of the deputy district attorneys in that office have come in since the last election. What else do we know? The conviction rate, according to the Attorney General's website. Now, you're going to probably hear a lot about conviction rates tonight, but this is a website put out by the person who supposedly is endorsing my opponent, saying that his conviction rate is one of the lowest in the state over the past years. Furthermore, the management structure. There are managers here today, and with all due respect to them, they should be in the courtroom. This is an important race, ladies and gentlemen, and as a lawyer, I've spent too much time already talking, so what I'm going to tell you is pay attention, and you will see that I'm the best candidate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ravitch. And now for opening remarks from Stephan Passalacqua.
Good evening. I'm Stephan Passalacqua, your district attorney, and it's great to see this large turnout. I am 110% dedicated, passionate, and committed to this community. I'm a lifelong resident. My mother's in the back room. My wife's here. We are raising our beautiful 2 daughters here in Sonoma County. And after I graduated from law school, I joined the Sonoma County District Attorney's Office. I've been there ever since. And when I ran for district attorney and when the voters of Sonoma County elected me twice, I promised 3 things. That we would build a top-notch law office, one of the best in the state. That we would strengthen crime prevention programs. And that we would make victims' rights the cornerstone of my administration. I've kept those promises. And these past 8 years, my priorities have been to make Sonoma County residents safe and deliver justice in a swift, fair, and impartial manner. We have delivered results here in Sonoma County. We have one of the best offices in the state that has received local and statewide recognition. We have turned retirements into an opportunity to hire the best and the brightest. And one of them is here in this I was going to say courtroom. In this room, and that's Diana Gomez, who came from Orange County with extensive gang and homicide experience. And contrary to what my opponent may say, and she may not know because she's on the road a lot, Diana Gomez has handled some tough cases as a member of our management. But we've also brought diversity and bilingual staff to our office. We've developed performance standards. What a novel concept to have performance standards for prosecutors. And we have performed very well in the courtroom. Last year alone, our prosecutors succeeded with an 88% felony trial conviction rate. And on homicides, we had 100% guilty verdicts last year and this year. So I'm extremely proud of my office. I'm extremely proud of the prosecutors, the investigators, and the support staff. And I'll challenge anyone to find a better team that protects this community. One of the things that's also important is not only being in the courtroom, but being a full community partner. And that is strengthening crime prevention programs. And we've partnered with the Santa Rosa Boys and Girls Club to keep kids out of gangs. With the Grain community, one of our priorities has been to go directly to seniors with information about scams and fraud that predators use on them as being the vulnerable sector of our community. And when alcohol becomes a problem, and has been a problem in our community with drunk driving, we brought state-of-the-art technology to monitor drunk drivers, help them comply with treatment, and make our roads safe. And we don't just stop in the courtroom or in the community. We work hard for victims to make sure that they have the access they need to services. And that was a problem. But in this economic climate, people said, well, there's nothing you can do. I didn't throw my arms up in despair. I rolled up my sleeves, and together with our partners such as the YWCA, the Council on Aging, United Against Sexual Assault, Catholic Charities, Legal Aid, as a team, we raised over $1.3 million to establish the Family Justice Center, which will open later this year. Can you imagine an 88-year-old lady being assaulted and burglarized in her home and having to go to 23 different places to get help? With the Family Justice Center, a victim of family violence will have to go to only one location to get the help they need: a restraining order, counseling, to be interviewed. And this will be the 5th Family Justice Center in the state of California. Ladies and gentlemen, in this difficult economic time and budget pressures, it's imperative that we have a district attorney as more than just a courtroom prosecutor. That person has to be a good manager. That person has to be a champion of public safety. And I am the candidate who has a proven record of doing all of that. At the end of the day, the community wants to be safe. I've worked hard, tirelessly to do that. I'm going to continue that the next 4 years, and I would respectfully ask for 4 more years based on the job that I've been doing. Based on the job I've been doing. 3 people remind me of my commitment to make this community safe for your family and mine. That's my wife, Angie, who's in the back, and our beautiful 2 little girls. Juliana's 2, and Sophia is 5. I look forward to answering your questions tonight, and thank you so much for coming here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Passalacqua. Our first question is to the winner of our coin toss tonight, Ms. Ravitch. As District Attorney, how would you handle a fatal use of force incident involving local police? You have 4 minutes.
Okay, well, that's a really good question, because as I mentioned when I made my opening statement, I have the support of all of these police officer associations, and I'll tell you what, this is a #1 thing for them in terms of their disagreement and disenchantment with the incumbent. These officer-involved incidents are investigated by agencies other than the agency in which the officer is involved. A report is submitted to the DA's office for review and for determination about whether or not there are going to be criminal charges filed. Well, according to a grand jury report that came out, the district attorney's office is taking between 7 and 22 months to issue their reports. And that's in spite of a memo that was issued in 2003, soon after my opponent took office, wherein he said he wanted the turnaround time to be about 30 days. What's with the delay? And what happens during that delay? An officer will be cleared by his own agency or her own agency through an internal affairs investigation, maybe back out on the street, but what is he or she thinking about? Not keeping us safe. He or she is thinking about their job. We'd rather have them thinking about us. There needs to be a priority in how those investigations are done. There needs to be a priority in who reviews those investigations and reports back to me, because ultimately I will make the decision. In Mendocino County, the district attorney's office does the full investigation as well as the evaluation, so there's complete impartiality. I'd take a look at that down here and see whether or not we need to change that. That's what happens in Contra Costa as well, and I believe it's happening in Solano too. There needs to be complete impartiality in the review of the events, but more importantly, there needs to be responsibility and responsiveness. The attorneys who are being given the challenge of reviewing these investigations and making a determination or presenting a report to their supervisor are not being relieved of their other responsibilities. We need to prioritize this. We owe it to the people that wear badges on the street working hard to protect us every day. It will be a priority in my office. We will be handling these reports effectively and efficiently. And allegations of rubber stamping are completely nothing more than political baloney. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ravitch. Same question to you, Mr. Passalacqua. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you. The use of lethal force, it obviously is a serious matter, and it's something that has to be done very carefully and methodically, because it involves victims' lives, it involves law enforcement's lives, and it involves the community outcry when there's tragedy. So it's not something that can be done overnight, and we've been methodical, and we'll continue to be methodical. But the fact of the matter is, in 2007 and 2008, there were 17 officer-involved incidents. And that is an incredible number. As compared to the 6 previous years, it was nowhere near that number. And so I think the issue really is, what do we do to reduce those numbers? I think that's the issue that this community cares about. And what has been done is there's mental health crisis training for law enforcement. That was discussed at our Chiefs Association meetings after a number of these occurred, and I fully supported that. And I'm glad to see finally that these numbers have gone down drastically. In 2009, there was 1 jail death in Sonoma County. So the fact of the matter is we've been methodical, we've been diligent, and contrary to what my opponent has said, the fact of the matter is many times these delays are attributed to law enforcement as well. For example, in 2008, the tragic death of Mr. Fernandez in Rohnert Park, November of 2008, the sheriff's office did the investigation. We did not receive the reports till almost a year later, in August of 2009. We reviewed the reports and made a decision within 90 days. So sometimes in the political world, there's a little more to it than people may be told. But the fact of the matter is we're diligent, we're careful, and I'm just pleased that these numbers have drastically dropped.
Thank you. Ms. Ravitch, you have 1 minute for rebuttal.
7 to 22 months after the reports reach the district attorney's office. Talk to the deputy district attorneys who have to review those reports and ask them whether or not they have the time and the resources necessary to do what needs to be done. We do need to do more in terms of keeping those incidents from occurring with mental health crisis counseling, with training of police officers. Bill Cogbill's really stepped up as our sheriff to deal with that. But most importantly, as district attorney, it needs to be a priority. We owe it to our members of law enforcement that we get those reports reviewed and then we get our response out. Thank you.
Mr. Passalacqua, 1 minute.
Actually, I agree with counsel, or my opponent, I guess. It seems like we're in the courtroom. It's counsel. It is a priority. It's always been a priority, and it will continue to be a priority. But the fact of the matter is, you're dealing with complex issues. You're dealing with expert opinions. For example, in a particular jail death involving the tragedy of Ryan George, it involved retaining an expert to look at the medical reports on sickle cell anemia. So it took months to retain an expert and took months to have the expert issue an opinion. So, you know, these things they can't be rubber stamped. They can't be turned around overnight. And we recognize that these are important not only to the victim's family, but also law enforcement. But in any homicide case, we have to be methodical to make a decision that's fair to the victim, to the suspect, and to the community. And we'll continue to do that.
Thank you. Moving on to question 2. We will begin with Mr. Passalacqua. How should the determination be made in the district attorney's office whether to seek sentencing which results in rehabilitation, restorative justice, or punishment?
May I stand? I fully support rehabilitation instead of incarceration, and my record shows that. We are supportive of a prison reentry program, a pilot program in the county jail with the California Community Development. 46 individuals have been in that program last year, and 35 are successfully completing that program. So that is 11 have reoffended, which is a 23% recidivism rate. We know what happens in state prison. 70% of people who go to prison get out within 3 years and reoffend. So we have many innovative programs here in Sonoma County. The Early Case Resolution Court, which started last year and I helped launch with the courts, the public defender, and probation, we are able to have the same justice sooner. And that's so important to victims, to being efficient in this economic climate. And to just give you an example, 70% of the felony cases were resolved within 3 weeks. 3 weeks. A snapshot in 2006 showed that it took over 100 days to resolve those cases. So we're being efficient, we're getting people into treatment, there's finality for victims' families, and we're getting people back into the community in terms of if they need a drug treatment program, instead of being in the county jail where the costs are so astronomical. So there are so many rehabilitative programs for drug court, for DUI court, where we monitor people to turn their lives around. Because I firmly believe that we have to be smart with our resources, with the taxpayers' funds. And so if we have an opportunity to salvage a life here in Sonoma County, we should do it. We're going to continue doing it. Bless you. Instead of sending someone to state prison, because we know that system is broken. We know that that is a waste of resources. So I fully support innovative programs, as I mentioned, as well as the truancy court in the juvenile division to help kids get back in school, because we know how important it is for our youth to get an education. And, Franklin Roosevelt once said that we can't build a future for our youth, but we can build our youth for the future. So we have to continue being innovative with programs not just in the adult division, but in the juvenile division, to help people continue with their lives and reach their potential. Thank you.
Mr. Ravitch, same question. You have 4 minutes.
Okay, I guess I got to stand up. Start with the juvenile rehabilitation programs. It's interesting that my opponent remarked upon that, because juvenile court is all about rehabilitation, and the dynamic in juvenile court is really important. There are actually some studies out that say you need to keep your staff in juvenile court for at least 2 or 2.5 years to make sure they understand the dynamic and they can be an effective participant in the process. My opponent uses juvenile court as a way station for his prosecutors. They serve a short term there, they get some trial experience, and then they get channeled back out into the adult system. The judges don't like the way that's being handled, because juvenile court is not being made a priority by this office. It needs to be. If we can deal with those kids, if we can really rehabilitate them and get them out of the system, then that's going to be less work for us on the adult side. It needs to be a priority, and it's all about rehabilitation. It's about restorative justice, which is having the offender face the victim and understand the pain that the victim feels, and have the victim face the offender and understand why the offender maybe didn't have the right direction that enabled them to go the way they did to hurt them. It's a really important process. In the adult system, it's a little bit different in terms of rehabilitation as opposed to punishment. But my priority is to get the nonviolent offenders out of the criminal justice system as quickly as we can, because our resources are strained. We need to be spending our limited resources prosecuting the violent offenders quickly and effectively, and getting them wherever they're headed, which in all likelihood, if they're violent offenders, is state prison. So rehabilitation programs are great, incredible cost savings. That's why I've been talking a lot with Michael Spielman, who supports me and runs the Drug and Alcohol Abuse Center. A lot of programs come out of that center. The district attorney has discretion to decide which programs should be used and which crimes that have been charged can be diverted into diversion programs. Absolutely use the diversion programs. It's all about keeping people from reoffending. A lot of people who are first-time offenders are drug and alcohol addicted. If we deal with the drug and alcohol addiction, we're not going to see them again. But again, it's a question of experience. And as I said in my opening statement to you, I've got 22 years as a trial lawyer, 18 years as a prosecutor, handling thousands and thousands of cases. I understand which cases should be diverted, and I understand which cases need what limited resources we have to be prosecuted effectively through our system. Did you tell me time was up? Oh, see, lawyers like to keep talking too. But it is a question of priorities, and I do believe that we have the resources in Sonoma County, and most importantly, we have the community support. We have a lot of community-based organizations that want to get involved with the criminal justice system, systems like restorative justice, so that we can give, I have a lot of time, look out, the opportunities that they need. But again, it's a question of which crimes are going to go in which direction. And I'll give you an example. During the time I did criminal defense, I represented a professional who stole a bottle of alcohol from a store. And I talked to the representative at the DA's office about getting that person into a diversion program because there were incredible mental health issues. I was told no. This was a crime involving a victim, and this individual had to come into court, enter a plea, and then seek the diversionary process. Does that make sense with the limited resources that we have? Absolutely not. That's the kind of person that you would immediately divert into a program where they could deal with whatever it was that caused them to step over the line. All of that has to do with public safety consideration, ladies and gentlemen. That person doesn't pose a risk to us. Let's spend our time prosecuting the violent offenders. Thank you.
Sometimes in campaigns, opponents say things that are false accusations and misleading. And you heard a few of those just here today. The fact of the matter is we have talented prosecutors in our juvenile division. They care about rehabilitation, and they're there because they're making a difference in our youth lives. And secondly, the fact of the matter is we divert many individuals every year that never see the eyes of the courtroom. We divert over a couple thousand cases a year on a pre-file diversion on the exact type of cases that my opponent just alluded to. Simple petty theft, simple stealing alcohol or something like that. Those get diverted. They don't even go into the courtroom. But this election is about doing what's right to help people turn their lives around. And I have a record of making sure that people have an opportunity to go into treatment, go into rehabilitation programs, go into truancy court to get back into school, to help them, to help money from the state go to the school district, to have the programs to help kids meet their potential. So I'm really proud of the working relationship we have with the courts, with probation, and with the community. Thank you so much.
You have 1 minute.
Truancy court. It's interesting that just came up, okay? Because I was at the Educational Foundation dinner Saturday night for Roanoke Park Cotati School District, and I talked to a principal there who's in charge of the program down there. And she said, I'm so disappointed in what the district attorney's office is doing. She said, I report these cases out, and there don't seem to be any teeth in the prosecution. She says, I'll find out that, well, we've continued the case, or the person didn't come to court, or something like that. You know why that's important? It's important for a lot of reasons. It's important for accountability for the parent. It's also important because these schools receive their funds based on student attendance. If the parents don't send the kids to school, the schools don't get the money to educate them, and the kids are out and about, maybe getting into trouble. It's a question of priorities, ladies and gentlemen, not hyperbole. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to question 3. It has been said in recent months that Ms. Ravitch lacks sufficient managerial skill to handle a district attorney's office of the size and budget of Sonoma counties. It has also been said that Mr. Passalacqua underutilizes the district attorney's resources by allowing senior attorneys to carry a light caseload. Indeed, you each referenced your opponent's managerial faults here tonight. What management skills will you bring to the position of district attorney that make you a better candidate for this position than your opponent? We will begin with Ms. Ravitch. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you. I'll start by standing up. It's kind of fun to stand up because then I can see everybody in the back of the room, too. It's been said I don't have the requisite managerial skills to run the office. Well, again, I caution you when you think about experience, think about what the word really means. Does it mean holding a title for 8 years? Or does it mean being in the courtroom, getting the job done, and supervising those who are trying to do it as well? I'll give you a perfect example of what the manager should be doing in the district attorney's office. I did it today. We had a junior deputy district attorney handle a very serious case today. It was a home invasion robbery where the victim was shot in the head. Well, of course, the victim was a drug dealer. Most of the witnesses were drug dealers. And so it was a difficult case from an evidentiary standpoint. I've been working with that young man, getting him ready to present the case, talking to him about putting on expert testimony because it's a gang case, and then I sat with him today while he presented the case. I'm his chief deputy district attorney. I'm his direct supervisor. My role was to help him build himself up, gain experience in the courtroom. That's what the managers are supposed to be doing. They have to get out from behind their desks. They have to go into the courtroom and be the prosecutors that they are, because when a senior prosecutor is in the courtroom, the junior ones are learning. It's like when you go out on rounds in the hospitals, right? The senior surgeon is doing rounds, and the juniors are learning from their experience. That's what should be happening with our managers. That's what we're doing up north, and that's what should be happening down here as well. As I said, I carried a full caseload. I tried 3 murder cases and a home invasion robbery while I was overseeing an office with usually about 15 deputy district attorneys. We can do that here, and I intend to make that a priority. In terms of managing the office overall, it's a question of trust. It's a question of respect. And I think that with regard to the attorneys, you earn their trust and their respect by trusting them. What I tell everybody, a leader is successful because the people they lead succeed. If that office succeeds, then I am a success. Right now, that office turnover is phenomenal. Why aren't people staying? Is it the morale? Is it a poor choice in employment? Whatever it is, it's not working, and we deserve better here in Sonoma County. That's what leadership is about. That's what management is about, understanding what the job is, respecting the people who do it, empowering them to get it done to the best of their ability, giving them the tools to get it done, and then supporting them when they go out and do the job. It's a tough job. Resources are limited, budgets are getting cut, people are worried about layoffs. They need to know that we're here to support them. So I've spent the last 2 years as a manager up in Mendocino County. I ran a private practice after I left the district attorney's office. I mentored attorneys and was a team leader when I was in Sonoma County. When my opponent took office, he was just a mid-level prosecutor. He had no management experience at all. In the 8 years that he's held office, has he gained the necessary management experience? Well, I suggest again, the justice partners are not supporting him. Is his experience really something that we want to continue for another term? It's time for a change. It's time for experience. It's time for leadership with a commitment to justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Passalacqua, you have 4 minutes.
To hear my opponent talk about turnover, because she was part of the turnover in Sonoma County DA's office. The fact of the matter is we've had close to 50% of people who have left the DA's office retired, and they deserve to retire after hard careers of being public servants. And so the fact of the matter is we also have had people leave the office to pursue other interests in their life. And we certainly encourage people to reach their potential and do what they want to do in life. But that has been an opportunity to hire some of the best prosecutors in the state of California, such as Tracy Carrillo, who was the Riverside Prosecutor of the Year, has gang and homicide experience, is a veteran prosecutor, and just recently successfully handled the jury trial of a young man who killed his grandfather. Or Tashawn Sanders, a veteran from Los Angeles District Attorney's Office, came here with extensive sexual assault and handling cases involving sexual predators. Last year, you may recall the tragedy in Santa Rosa, where a young woman was kidnapped and sexually assaulted in front of her 2-year-old boy. That person is serving a 58 years to life sentence, and Tashawn Sanders handled that. But I think the fact of the matter is we have a phenomenal management staff. And again, council is misleading the public. As we speak, 2 of our top members of management have been in court, not just helping a junior deputy, but handling the murder case, People v. Tosti. They've been in trial for over 6 months. Diana Gomez, my assistant district attorney, was involved in the grand jury of that for months. Diana Gomez also handled successfully the case of People v. Javier Pena. And Bill Broccoli handled the case of Joe Lynchard, who tragically, with a blood alcohol level of 0.24, killed Catherine Black, and her parents are here in this room. I also think it's important that being district attorney is about standing up to people. It's about being firm and being independent. And sometimes that involves standing up to law enforcement. Sometimes that involves standing up to the sheriff. Because we make tough decisions that affect lives every day. I'm not the attorney for the sheriff. I'm the attorney for the people of Sonoma County. I've been that for 8 years, and I hopefully will be that for another 4 years. So, I'm troubled by my opponent's remarks here tonight, because once again, she's misleading the public. And, the fact of the matter is, being the district attorney involves making difficult decisions that are not popular. I didn't become DA for a popularity contest. I became a DA because I want to make a difference. My family is raised here, my daughters are growing up here, and to continue to make this place safe. So I think it's long overdue. to hear an explanation tonight from my opponent about her work history. The public has a right to know about a person's work history. My opponent has had 6 jobs in 6 years. The public has a right to know her choices, because when you're a district attorney, you have to make tough choices that affect lives on a regular basis. And I have a proven track record of being independent, being fair-minded. I'm troubled by my opponent's work history. Others have been troubled. We've seen letters to the editor, and I certainly hope tonight we'll have an explanation about her choices. And one other thing I do want to say, since I have 15 seconds left, is Sonoma County is 500,000 people. We have 130 employees, 53 attorneys. Mendocino is 1/3 the size of my office. Our team leaders supervise people in court. Our chief deputies and assistant DAs have tried cases and handle important matters that affect public safety. Thank you.
I was just informing Ms. Ravitch that the camera folks at the back have asked that the candidates remain seated. And Ms. Ravitch, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. I wanted you to know it wasn't my fault that I'm not standing up. First of all, retirement. You can retire from the practice of law, or you can retire from Stephan Passalacqua's office. Many of those who have retired are still practicing law. Second of all, the number of people who've left, I'm one of them that left, absolutely. And the day I left, 2 other senior deputy district attorneys walked out as well. Many people have left because they can't work for the incumbent. Number 3, experience has come and gone. I don't have anything negative to say about the attorneys that were just referenced, but let's think about some senior deputy DAs that were hired and didn't stick around. They went back to where they came from because this wasn't someplace where they wanted to stay, and that included experienced gang prosecutors from Southern California. So don't be misled by these figures, ladies and gentlemen. 6 jobs in 6 years. I have 10 seconds, so I'm hoping I'm going to be able to talk to you about that in a minute. But remember, one of them was teaching criminal law at Empire Law School as a professor at night. Thank you.
You have 1 minute.
Thank you. Again, I thought that was not a full explanation of my opponent's work history. The public has a right to know about her job history, just like, just, if I may.
Yes, thank you. The audience would please be quiet during the candidates' answers.
Thank you, moderator, for refereeing this matter. In any event, I think the public has a right to know about a person's job history. If you're applying to be a CEO, you have to get references. You have to give a resume of where you've been, what you've done, why you did it. And we haven't heard that from my opponent, and I think the public has a right to know.
Okay, now for our first audience question. A reminder to the candidates that you will each have 2 minutes to respond to the question with no time for rebuttal. A reminder to the audience that questions posed will be posed to both candidates, and they are not to be posed to one candidate individually. Our first question, this will be to Mr. Passalacqua. Earlier this month, Sonoma County became the first county in the Bay Area in which anyone booked into the county jail automatically will have their immigration status checked. How do you feel about the ICE raids and the immigration status checks upon being arrested? You have 2 minutes.
I'm the 4th generation here from Italian-Irish immigrants, and I firmly believe that this is a country to give opportunities to everybody. And many immigrants in this community work hard, day and night, to support their families. And I don't agree with the way sometimes law enforcement impounds cars on someone who has a suspended license. They don't do it in other counties, and I think it's time, long overdue here in Sonoma County, that that practice changes. Secondly, I just want to say that there has been some controversy recently in the paper about the sheriff's position on that, and the federal government working with him on that. And again, that's his jurisdiction, his decision to make that. But I do not agree with some of the policies on impounding the vehicles.
Thank you, Ms. Ravitch. 2 minutes.
Okay, first
all, I'll answer by saying that I think Sheriff Bill Cogbill is on record saying this was done by ICE, not by him, that this is their program, that they came into the jail and set it up, and it's not something that he has participated in. Second of all, I don't think that it really is within the purview of the district attorney to comment upon what ICE is doing. It's a different jurisdiction. And then finally, I'm going to take the rest of the 2 minutes to tell you about my 6 jobs, okay? So one of them was the job that I had for almost 15 years that I couldn't keep because I couldn't work for the incumbent. Next, I went into private practice, and as a criminal trial attorney, the logical place to go was to become a criminal defense attorney, and that's what I did. I didn't particularly enjoy it, so when I had a chance to become a civil litigator, I jumped on it. Now, in between that time, my partner in criminal defense said, I really don't like it, and she went off and did wills and trusts. Are you counting? Finally, as soon as I had a chance to go to Mendocino County, there I went, and that's where I've been ever since, until you elect me as your next district attorney. And as I mentioned, I have the honor of being a professor of criminal law at Empire Law School, where I've been teaching at night, even when I've been driving down after a long day in Ukiah, perhaps even in a murder trial, so that I can work with the students at Empire Law School, one of whom's in the audience here tonight, Roz Smith, and is a clerk up in Mendocino County working with me, and it's been absolutely a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question from the audience, we will begin with Ms. Ravitch. We are victims whose son was killed by another driver. The driver had prior offenses and was given minimal consequences, and he continued to escalate and eventually killed our son. What does this have to do with upholding public safety? Where is the justice for our child?
I'm sorry, wherever you are, and I really advocate for serious penalties for people who drink and drive. I prosecuted a young man, Christopher Kazis, when he was 19 years old for second-degree murder because he'd been previously convicted of drinking and driving. And the jury decided that the evidence I presented showed he knew that when you drink and drive, somebody can get hurt or killed. And they held him responsible for the murder of the gentleman who died. I do think that our laws have really improved with regard to drunk driving. I think the penalties are stiffer. I know that we have a DUI court. I actually have some quarrel with it because instead of incarceration, they're sort of overlooking their mandatory duties and they're trying to get them into rehabilitation. I support rehabilitation, but I still think there need to be penalties for drunk drivers. So all I can say to the individual who wrote the question, I think that the office needs to be strong in its prosecution of drunk driving. Up north, we have a 5-year grant of probation. We have mandatory minimum sentences. We don't hesitate to violate probation if somebody strays by drinking. We have really strong law enforcement. And I know down here, particularly in Petaluma, there's really strong law enforcement as well to make sure that these drunk drivers do not repeat these offenses. But you have to put it together with the rehabilitation. One thing I talked to with somebody was about, hey, why don't we get the car makers to put the interlock devices in all cars so that anybody who gets in the car has to blow into a thingamajig to see whether they have any alcohol on board. Maybe that's a cost we as a society are willing to bear so that we can keep people from getting behind the wheel, drinking, driving, and injuring our loved ones.
I would just express, hello, can you hear me? I would just express my condolences for the family that lost their son. Can only imagine what they're going through, the pain of not having their son here. We take a very aggressive stance on these type of cases. I mentioned the case of People versus Joseph Lynchard. He's serving a life sentence in prison for killing someone, having been drunk when he had a .24 blood alcohol level. We also vigorously and aggressively prosecuted the case of a young man who was driving with cocaine and marijuana in his system, and in a quick second destroyed an entire family on Highway 101. 5 people died. He will be serving a prison sentence shortly. So we're very aggressive with our prosecution. We have top-notch prosecutors, and we also work on the preventive side with the program called Alive at 25, where we go directly into the schools to reach kids, to let them know that they're at a very vulnerable age, and in a split second, one decision they make, whether it's driving recklessly or getting in a car where someone's drunk, can shatter lives and destroy dreams. So we're a very strong component of that. We have the DUI court, and I disagree with counsel. That's a wonderful court to help people turn their lives around, have accountability. We've brought state-of-the-art technology to Sonoma County, the first county in the North Bay, to monitor people who have alcohol problem 24/7. If it measures it in the skin, if it goes off, it goes to a computer and they can be arrested immediately. So I'm proud of our collaboration in holding people accountable, but also trying to save lives and prevent tragedies from occurring in the first place.
Thank you. Our next audience question, we will begin with Mr. Passalacqua. What should be the role of the district attorney with respect to exculpatory evidence? Is the only measure of the office convictions? What role should compassion play?
I think compassion plays one of the biggest roles in the office of the district attorney, being passionate to victims, but also being very respectful for the rule of law. And we have an obligation that's different than defense attorneys. We have an obligation to make sure that justice is done. And if that means if there's certain evidence comes forward that leaves a doubt for us as to whether we can prove the case, then we have to do the right thing, and that is not proceed. So I'm a firm believer of protecting the Constitution, protecting rights on both sides of the aisle. We do that every day, and we're going to continue doing that. I also want to point out that in terms of alcohol issues that we mentioned a moment ago, I'm very proud to receive the endorsement of the California Highway Patrol Commander, Captain Kelly Young, his staff does a fabulous job of doing the investigations on these vehicular manslaughters that we see too often. But I think it's also important to, how much time do you have left there? Okay, thank you. I think it's also important to have accountability, and we strive to do that every day. But when there's evidentiary issues, we have an obligation to notify the defense if something came forward they weren't aware of. And we have to make sure we're always being fair in the arena and have a level playing field to protect everyone's rights, because that's how we have to ensure that we have fair justice and to everybody concerned in our community.
Sure. We absolutely have a duty. I mean, prosecutors are held to a very high standard. Our job is so essential that we have integrity and a high sense of ethics. We make decisions every day about whether to bring criminal charges against people. That takes away their freedom. That puts a stigma on them. If you've been charged with a crime, it isn't the kind of thing you can walk away from. It's going to go with you forever. So it's very important that that discretion be used wisely. Once you level charges against somebody, the investigation is not over. You continue the investigation throughout with the other law enforcement agencies, and if you come upon any information that indicates it may be exculpatory or it may tend towards innocence, you have an absolute duty to disclose that immediately to the defense. That was one of the quarrels I had that led me to support the incumbent when he ran against my boss, because of a case that occurred back in 2002. I feel very strongly about that. And if I have to walk into court and dismiss a case based on insufficient evidence, I'm proud to do that, and I've done it before. And I instill that in all of the attorneys that work for me up in Mendocino County. We may be small, but we're proud. And I don't think it's only based on numbers. I think it's based on how you approach your job. And I think that I've worked well with those attorneys. Many of them are supporting me. One of them is here tonight. And I think that speaks volumes, because I have the experience. I understand that when somebody comes to me with an issue, gee, Jill, should I turn this over? It's going to mess my case up. It's easy for me to respond, absolutely. You give it up, and then you fight like hell in a court of law to determine what's going to happen on your case if you reach that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next audience question will begin with Ms. Ravitch. Foster children have become targets of human traffickers. What will you do as district attorney to protect foster children from becoming rape victims when trafficked, or from being trafficked at all?
That's a very hard question, I have to tell you. It begins with an assumption that foster children become victims, and I do think that human trafficking is a problem with regard to child prostitution. It was a big problem here with the Lana Motel down on Santa Rosa Avenue that was closed down. And I know that there was a lot of discussion about whether that case should have been handled criminally. If anybody remembers the Lana Motel, it was a motel full of prostitution. The incumbent elected not to prosecute the individuals involved. The city attorney was given the opportunity to pursue civil remedies. And in his opinion, Judge Tanzel said the evidence had proven beyond a reasonable doubt that there was guilt, and yet the incumbent chose not to pursue it. I think that the district attorney needs to set the tone in this county, that that kind of conduct is not going to be condoned. And then we need to prosecute effectively anybody who violates the laws with regard to foster children or anybody else who are taken advantage of. It's all about keeping our community safe, ladies and gentlemen, and it's all about priorities. And those priorities are determined based on experience. Experience in the courtroom, experience working with our justice partners, not doing what is politically expedient. Thank you.
That is a very important issue for our community, and I care deeply about our youth, our foster kids, including our foster kids. That's why I'm on the board of directors for the Valley of the Moon Children's Foundation, where we help kids who have been neglected or abused. Human trafficking is an issue that we face not only in this community, but throughout the state and throughout the nation, and that is why I partnered with Supervisor Valerie Brown and other nonprofits in our community to put on a forum of human trafficking here in Santa Rosa last year, where over 300 people came. We had a panel of experts in this field to raise awareness that that is happening in our community, and that we need to shine the light on those individuals who put children in a form of slavery, if you will, whether it's prostitution, doing work in the home or in the field, what have you. We need to raise awareness. So I firmly believe that we continue to do more. We need to raise awareness on this issue, and that's what I've done. With respect to what Council mentioned a moment ago, again, she just does not have her facts correct, and that's sad, because the fact of the matter is a prosecutor who had left the office to be closer to her family came back to our office because it was such a great office. And she handled that matter, and she made the decision that it was not provable from a criminal perspective, as well as other members of the management team. And we partnered with the city of Santa Rosa to file a 17-200 action, which is unfair business practice. And so we partnered on that trial that Council alluded to, and were successful to hold the owners of Lano Motel accountable.
Next question, we will begin with Mr. Passalacqua. What can we do to provide services to youth prior to offending? What do you think those services should be?
We're doing that right now. The numbers in the juvenile division have dropped significantly because of the innovative programs we have out there, because of the assessment tools where when someone is arrested in the juvenile hall, there's a team of people that come together to assess what that person needs. And many times there are services in the community that are available to help a person turn their lives around or address the root causes of why they were arrested in the first place. So we're continuing to be very diligent in making sure that there's pre-diversion programs to keep our youth not in the criminal justice system, and certainly that they won't go in the adult division. But the truancy court is a great program, as I mentioned a moment ago, where Judge Ballinger and our office and the public defender, John Abrahams, have partnered. And I've been in that courtroom. I've seen these kids come back, and they're finally, Judge Ballinger will bring them an alarm clock, make sure they get up to go to school. And there's a one-on-one dialogue, and these kids are getting their GED. They're graduating from high school, and they're getting jobs in our community. So we need to continue to be innovative in getting kids to go in the right direction. In this economic climate, it's important more than ever to have a district attorney who has experience working with nonprofit organizations. I've been building relationships for 8 years to come up with innovative programs such as the gang prevention program in the San Jose Boys and Girls Club, which helps these kids stay out of gangs. In fact, we've expanded it to Petaluma, to Sonoma, to Windsor, and now into some of the schools here in Santa Rosa. And it's a phenomenal program. It's a nationally proven model. The Juvenile Justice Institute studied this program, and in 25 out of 29 measurements, it helped kids build self-esteem and self-confidence. And we know that is the reasons why many times kids join gangs. So it's been a phenomenal program that I'm very proud of.
Well, Ernesto Oliveras is a city councilman here in Santa Rosa, and he serves on the mayor's gang task force. He was a law enforcement officer for almost 30 years, and he's endorsed me. And he's endorsed me in great part because of his concern about the district attorney's approach to gang violence with youth. The Santa Rosa mayor's gang task force, of which my opponent is a member, is all about prevention, intervention, enforcement. You start on the front end, you assess these kids, you figure out the ones that are at risk, and you put them into programs where they won't get into trouble. The whole idea is to keep them from coming into the system where my opponent and I spend our days. And it's important that the district attorney's office partner with it and give it more than lip service and mention different boards or associations that they're affiliated with, that they stay at the meeting until the meeting's over, that they participate in the conversation, and that they show a commitment by their attendance and their participation. And according to Mr. Oliveras, it's lacking at the Mayor's Gang Task Force. And furthermore, the Mayor's Gang Task Force, as I've been saying for quite a while, should be expanded beyond the city. It's being funded by Measure O funds, but we can find a way to expand it beyond the city's limits, because gang violence doesn't stop in Santa Rosa. And I'm focusing on gang violence because that's one of the biggest issues for people in our community. There's a real concern that it's on the increase, and it's affecting our kids. It's a real problem. With regard to truancy, I repeat, a principal in the Roner Park Cotati School District in charge of the SART program says, it sounds like a great program, but it hasn't got any teeth. We need follow-through. We need more than empty words. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will begin with Ms. Ravitch. How does the district attorney determine what a gang is and who is a member?
It isn't me, actually. What happens with cases involving alleged gang violence is that the law enforcement out investigating makes an initial determination. And police agencies have criteria that they work through in terms of determining who is or is not a gang member. You can be a gang member, you can be an associate of a gang member, you can be an affiliate of the gang member. Once that determination is made and the report submitted to the DA's office, the DA decides whether or not to pursue it as a so-called gang case. And as I said earlier, it's really important that the DA have the experience and use their discretion wisely, because once you label a kid a gang member, it's going to follow them all the way through their life. It's hard enough to get a kid out of gangs. It's harder still to get that label away from them. It's important that we not lump them together, that we not participate in racial profiling, and that we look at each case individually, the level of participation by the individual, and make a good determination about whether or not this person has committed a so-called gang offense. Just being with other kids who may have associated with gang members isn't enough to bring this particular kid in. If we can get them away, if we can determine that they're in the wrong place with the wrong kids, rather than labeling them as a gang member, we can get them in a rehabilitation program or get them in a direction where they're not going to be involved in gang violence. So with regard to the criteria that are used, the penal code sets out the different criteria for determining gang membership and association. I've been prosecuting those cases for years, but it's important, most important, that we use our discretion wisely in making those decisions, particularly with regarding to kids.
Thank you. We have done I think, just an outstanding job of addressing the gang problem in our community. One of the things we did is we hosted a California Gang Summit in 2006 to raise awareness. This is a regional issue now. It's gangs are operating up and down the state. And so we formed the North Bay FBI Safe Street Task Force, where we have a full-time investigator working with the FBI and other law enforcement officials to go after the hardcore gang members. And we've been getting outstanding results in federal court and in the Sonoma County Courthouse. We also, I'm not going to quiver with council's or my opponent's explanation of what a gang is and what the charges are, because essentially what she said is accurate in that regard. But I think the area where we do have a difference is the approach with our youth. We have been very actively involved with the Mayor's Gang Prevention Task Force. I was one of the original persons appointed back in 2003, and I was pleased to hear the retired Lieutenant Ernie Oliveris recently speak at a Rotary luncheon, where he said, and it's in the Rotary newsletter as well, that there's been remarkable success on reducing gang membership and gang violence in our community. And he's correct, there has been. And partly because of the collaborative effort that we have with nonprofits, with the Boys and Girls Clubs, with the faith-based institutions, and the schools. Superintendent Sharon Liddell is very impressed with the gang prevention program. We've already brought it to Kid Street Learning Center, a charter school here in Santa Rosa. She asked that we take it to that school because she saw the presentation given at the Mayor's Gang Prevention Task Force. So we're working on many fronts to address gang violence and make sure our kids stay out of gangs. As I mentioned, this gang prevention program, it's a proven model, and it's been expanded countywide to make a difference in so many kids' lives.
Thank you. Our next question will begin with Mr. Passalacqua. What will you do as District Attorney when a woman wants to report domestic violence or sexual assault by a police officer to your office for investigation because she doesn't trust police and sheriff to investigate their own?
You know, that has come up in the past, and it certainly is a tragedy when any woman is a victim of a sexual assault, especially a tragedy when it involves a police officer wearing a badge and having a gun. And so we take those type of matters very seriously. We have historically gotten the Attorney General involved in those type of incidents, and we'll continue to do so if that type of thing develops. But it is a tragedy when that happens. I think one of the great things about the Family Justice Center when it opens up later this year is it's going to be for victims of family violence, whether it's sexual assault, domestic violence, or elder abuse. And it's going to be a one-stop shop where a victim can go talk to a victim advocate, can talk to a detective, can talk to a member of the Special Victims Unit, as well as get the counseling that they need. And I think it's also important that we have very clear policies and go after sexual predators, which we've done in this community. And I must say that I was troubled with a case in Mendocino County under my opponent's watch, where a school teacher charged with multiple counts of sexual battery and annoying and molesting children was allowed to resign, and the charges were dropped. He didn't do a day of jail, and he never will have to register as a sex offender. So I was troubled to hear that happened under my opponent's watch, and we don't do that in Sonoma County. We're vigorously prosecuting school teachers and getting lengthy prison sentences.
Thank you. Ms. Ravitch?
That's called politics. The case you just heard about, I've been hearing about because my opponent is citing that as one of the sweetheart deals he says that I make. Whenever asked what are the sweetheart deals, this is the one he's come up with. So I researched it, and actually it is a school teacher up in Mendocino County who was charged with sexual assault way before I even applied for the job there. And the defense attorney who represented him worked with the district attorney herself, Meredith Lintott, and the two of them worked through that case and came to the resolution that he would resign his job because she had evidentiary difficulties. I had nothing to do with that case. I actually have the docket here if anybody wants to see it. It's here somewhere. You're not going to find my name on the docket, and you're not going to find my fingerprints on the file. That's cheap politics.
Could you address the question instead?
I would love to address the question.
Commenting during the candidate's answer.
I prosecuted a CHP officer for domestic violence, and I gained a felony conviction. The district attorney's office doesn't need to call the AG in. We can handle those cases, and I did that. I think it was when I was working for the incumbent. It's important that we investigate and we prosecute any violence against women and children, as well as any other crimes that occur in Sonoma County. The DA actually has what's equivalent to a police department under his watch. He can use his investigative bureau to prosecute or investigate those crimes just as much as he can send them to serve search warrants in front of the cameras at Sonoma State. It's a question of priorities, ladies and gentlemen. I've been prosecuting domestic violence and sexual assault cases for years. We need to deal with offenders, whether they wear a uniform, whether they wear a hard hat, whether they wear a suit and tie, in the same way. We don't tolerate that behavior. We investigate it. We prosecute it to the fullest extent of the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to our next question, we'll begin with Ms. Ravitch. Let's talk money. Who are your major donors?
Well, actually, my parents here gave me some money, and my sister and my brother. And today we turned in our most recent reporting, and I'm kind of honored to say that we have the most money, I think, in the bank, over $100,000, if I'm correct, more than all the 16 campaigns that are running right now, which suggests that we have incredible financial support. With regard to specific donors, these are public records, so if anybody wants to go and take a look, please do so. It's been suggested that most of my donors are defense attorneys for whom I give sweetheart deals. Again, that's a flat-out lie, ladies and gentlemen. I'm waiting to hear what proof there is, because there is none. And isn't that a reckless statement to make when you want to be the district attorney, the chief law enforcement officer? So my donations have come from a variety of different places. They've come from police officer organizations. They've come from my friends here in the front row, family, as well as individuals I've never met before who believe it's time for positive change in this office. Let's get away from politics. Let's get back to a pursuit of justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Passalacqua, 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The case that I alluded to in Mendocino County, I find it interesting that counsel says she didn't know about it. She's the chief deputy of the criminal division. If she doesn't know about a case, a high-profile teacher case in her jurisdiction, how is she going to know about what's happening here in Sonoma County? How is she going to be able to run one of the largest DA's office in Northern California? That's troubling, number one. Number two, she conveniently left out something very important about that case. Not only was that case dropped, and that person would never have to serve jail, would never have to register, lo and behold, the Sonoma County defense attorneys on that case contributed the maximum amount to her campaign.
Thank you. Our next question will begin with Mr. Passalacqua. How do you feel, the audience will please limit your commentary during the debate. How do you feel about giving women both time to raise families and career opportunities? What is your policy on this topic, and what have you done or would you do to implement this policy? You have 2 minutes.
That policy has already been implemented here in Sonoma County. We became one of the first DA's office in Northern California to implement a job share program, a alternative work schedule. We've had a number of prosecutors that have taken advantage of that, especially when they come back from maternity leave. But we're a very progressive office. We even had prosecutors, senior prosecutors recently apply for a job share, and I believe we're one of the first DA's office in California that allows senior prosecutors to do a job share, and that will take place later this year. So we're very cognizant of having a work-life balance. The fact of the matter is, it's a stressful job being a prosecutor. There are difficult decisions that have to be made, and there's tragedy that's in front of us every day. And we have to be strong. We have to stand up to so many different forces out there to make sure that the voice of victims is heard loudly and clearly. In fact, there's a person in the audience who we allowed to job share for 6 years, and now she's working with the public defender, but I think she would say that we were very progressive and appreciative that we allowed her to spend the summer with her kids. So we were very progressive in that area, and we're going to continue to be, because you have to have work-life balance, and it's stressful, I know, because I have 2 little girls, and my wife works in another area that is challenging to balance family needs, work needs, and community needs.
Same question, 2 minutes.
Well, I will agree it's a tough job, and I will agree that job sharing is a great idea, and it was something that was happening in the office prior to the incumbent taking office. So he's taking credit for something that was already in place. And Ann Gallagher-White, my dear friend and supporter, was a beneficiary of it for many years, and she did an outstanding job with Cynthia Ashmore when they ran the domestic violence court. But Ann, who's a mother of 3, asked for another opportunity to shorten her hours, and it was turned down. And she left after many years of service to this county as an outstanding prosecutor. And now she's with the Public Defender's Office doing a similarly outstanding job, much to the chagrin of those in the DA's office. This new job-sharing opportunity that my opponent is talking about, he put a memo out months ago saying, well, we're going to allow it to happen. It'll be the first time it's ever happened, as if it was a momentous occasion, and the 2 individuals that are seeking to job share are still waiting. They've been told that they won't be allowed to until the open positions in the office have been filled. And my understanding is at last count there are 3 open positions. So these people, while they may have been promised something, nothing has been delivered to them. And there's a real question about whether these positions will even be filled, because speaking of money, which some of us discussed a moment ago, there isn't much in the county, and there are going to be some significant cuts. So we're going to have to be really smart what we do with those positions, whether or not we fill them, whether or not we can fill them, or whether we have to give them up so that we can retain the outstanding prosecutors that are still in the office. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take 2 more questions, the first of which will be posed first to Ms. Ravitch. What should the protocol be for review of citizen complaints against officers?
Well, citizen complaints against officers generally go to the grand jury. We have a standing grand jury, and they review citizen complaints. If there is a complaint of criminal misconduct against an officer, it's either going to go through another agency or it'll be investigated by the district attorney's office itself. So there has been talk about having a citizens review board, and perhaps the questioner wanted to know what I thought about having such a thing. I have to tell you, I don't agree with the idea, and I know it's not popular with many because they have real concern about whether the grand jury is doing the watchdog job that we've asked them to do. But I think that there comes a time when you can't keep second guessing and re-reviewing what's been reviewed. We hold our officers to a very high standard, and I think we have outstanding law enforcement agencies here in Sonoma County. But if there is a concern, an individual can go first to the agency and lodge a complaint. Later they can go to the grand jury and follow that complaint through. Thank you.
Same question to you, Mr. Passalacqua, 2 minutes.
Basically, a citizen. Hello. Basically, a citizen can go to a law enforcement agency, as my opponent alluded to, and the other option is go to the grand jury. But they're very selective in the type of matters they handle. But I think it's important to note that in every officer-involved shooting, the grand jury looks at each and every one of those. And so that's one of the reasons why sometimes we're methodical, we're careful, because we don't rush to judgment on these type of matters. We have to be fair to the victim's family. We have to be cognizant of the community's concerns, and we also have to be cognizant of the officers involved in that particular manner. Essentially, what my opponent said is accurate in that regard. So I'm going to use a couple of my minute or so to just address the money issue. I was pleased to learn today that we've raised 3 times my opponent's what she's raised in the last 2.5 months. We have raised money from diverse interests throughout the county, from community people in every aspect of this county, and I'm proud of the union support I've received. I'm proud of civic leaders. We had a great kickoff recently where we had over 150 people attend, and so we're having people from every part of this county join our campaign. They're on Facebook, they're going to our website, Passalacqua 2010, and so I'm really proud of the support that we've received, and I think it's also important to have my opponent share what she's done in Mendocino County. What has she done to job sharing or alternative work schedules in Mendocino County? She's been there for almost 2 years. Is there any diversity in Mendocino County DA's office? Is there any bilingual staff? We have done that here in Sonoma County. We have one of the most diverse staffs in the state of California. My management team, we have 2 of the top assistants, the first Latina in the DA's office, Diana Gomez. We have Christine Cook, who's here, my other assistant, and both of them have been in the courtroom. They're phenomenal trial lawyers. In fact, Christine Cook handled a case that my opponent refused to handle, and she got a first-degree murder conviction on a gang murder case.
Thank you. Our final question this evening will begin with Mr. Passalacqua. What have you done and would you do to protect seniors and disabled people from being mistreated by their residential care facilities?
I'm going to stand up a little bit now. We work closely with the Council on Aging. We work closely with the Adult Protective Service to not only raise awareness but also prosecute those that commit elder abuse in our community. We've had some outstanding results in the courtroom where seniors have been sexually assaulted, where they've been abused by caregivers in homes. And this thing about residential care facilities is a concern that we have. And we've talked to Adult Protective Services. We've had conversations with state officials to do the inspections. But the challenge is obviously resources. The fact of the matter is Adult Protective Services had 15 social workers that did investigations in 1995. Take a guess how many they have today. 8. So it is a challenge to get the investigations done. That's why we've worked so hard to raise awareness with seniors, to arm seniors with information about the con artists that prey on seniors, whether it's someone who knocks on their door and says, hey, I'm going to fix your roof today, or someone who calls on the phone and says, by the way, you've won the lottery. Send us $2,500 or $5,000 and we'll give you the rest of the money. If it's too good to be true, it's not. And so we're going to forums throughout this county: Oakmont, Cloverdale, Sebastopol. We have other ones scheduled later this year in Sonoma and Petaluma to raise awareness that there are people who are going to take advantage of seniors, and they're doing it on a regular basis. So I'm proud of the relationships we have in this regard, and we're going to continue developing strong relationships to hold people accountable, which we do on a regular basis. Thank you.
And 2 minutes.
Thank you. We're getting older. We don't want to admit it, but we are. Our community is aging, and it's important that we protect our seniors. I'm really proud that Shirley Zane, supervisor, has withdrawn her support for my opponent and has endorsed me. I'm really proud to tell you about that right now because she ran the Council on Aging. This is one who has championed the fight against elder abuse, and she's decided I'm the better candidate. You can go out and have forums, you can talk about doing the right thing, or you can train your prosecutors to go into courtroom and get the job done. I prosecuted elder abuse cases. I've worked with attorneys who are prosecuting these elder abuse cases. Yes, we need outreach, but instead of sending our prosecutors to all of these forums throughout the county, let's give them the time in the courtroom. Let's give them the time with the advocates to work with these victims. A woman followed me out of a meeting. This is a true story. She followed me out of a meeting that I was at, and what she told me was, Jill, I just listened to you talk about what you want to do as DA, and I want you to know that I support you. And I said, well, thanks a lot. I've never met you before. And she said, the reason I'm supporting you is that my grandmother was a victim of violent crime. And we went to court, and the prosecutor was a very nice young man. That was the expression she used, very nice young man. But he was in over his head, and he didn't really know what he was doing. And when the case was over, it was really dissatisfying. She said, I understand. We need experience in that courtroom. We need leadership, and that's why I'm supporting you. True story.
Thus concludes our questioning section. I'd like to reintroduce our candidates to offer their closing remarks. Each will have 3 minutes, and we will begin with Mr. Passalacqua.
Thank you very much, Aaron, for moderating this debate, and I want to thank everyone for coming here this evening. I am proud to be your district attorney. I'm proud of my accomplishments the last 8 years. We have made a difference in this community. We are safer today. Your families are safer today than they were 8 years ago. Violent crime has dropped countywide, 27% alone in Santa Rosa. We've strengthened crime prevention programs, and we've made sure that the voice of victims is heard loudly and clearly in the courtroom and in the community. I am extremely proud of my staff. I'll challenge anyone to find a better, more cohesive, talented team of prosecutors, investigators, and victim advocates who work hard for you every day to render justice and to protect our families and our children. I'm also proud that we have delivered results. We don't talk about what we're going to do. We have done it. We've made this community safer. We brought positive and innovative strategic change to the criminal justice system, to the DA's office, and have strengthened our relationships with nonprofits. And that's why I'm so proud to have the Council on Aging Executive Director, Mariana McBride, support me, as well as Joanne Keaston and Renetta James, who are court watchers on elder protection cases every day. And they are very impressed with our experienced prosecutors who are delivering results, such as the case of People v. Akala, who is serving a 7-year prison sentence for elder financial abuse. Or another case where a person was sexually assaulted, and that person is serving an 8-year prison sentence. So I'm proud of my staff, and I'm proud of our record of achievements, of being innovative, of being firm and standing firm, and being independent. Not bowing down to special interests, and making sure that we uphold the law and make sure that we exercise justice in a fair and firm manner. I'm extremely proud of the support I've received from our Attorney General, Jerry Brown, as well as 6 out of the 7 last supervisors of Sonoma County. Crime Victims United of California, and the Sonoma County Law Enforcement Association, which consists of probation officers, emergency dispatchers, juvenile counselors, and so many other people that are on the front lines every day. I would be proud to have your support in this election. I look forward to continuing the challenges that we have in this ever-changing world in terms of economic and budget pressures. We have a $48 million deficit here in Sonoma County. Now is not the time to take risk on someone who's untested. I have a proven track record of fighting for resources, getting funding outside of the county, and making a difference to protect you and your families. And I'm going to continue to do that. If you will so kindly tell your friends, get on Facebook, come to our website, Passalacqua2010.com. Thank you very much.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, I was told I had to sit down, so I think that's what I'm going to do. But I want to thank you all again for coming out, and it was great to have the Young Dems put this forum on. I hope you saw there are differences between us. You know, you can say things or you can do things. You can take credit for things you haven't done, or you can promise to do things you know you will accomplish. That's really what distinguishes us, ladies and gentlemen. And if you look at who our endorsers are, I think you're going to understand which I'm talking about when I talk about somebody who's making promises that they can deliver. There is a complete loss of confidence in this county on the part of law enforcement. That's why they're all supporting me. After 2 terms, shouldn't the top law enforcement officer have everybody wearing a badge standing behind him? What's wrong? Well, a lot of them say they don't know the names of the deputy district attorneys on the subpoena logs because the turnover is so great. A lot of them say they don't understand why these senior attorneys who are managers aren't handling the difficult cases. It's a question of priorities, and the way you determine those priorities is based upon your experience. My experience has been primarily in the courtroom, but it has also been more recently through supervision. So I understand what it takes to get the job done, and that's why I've been honored by the support of so many, including, as I said, Shirley Zane, a champion in the elder abuse fight, and somebody who has been working tirelessly on the Family Justice Center that we've heard so much about. She's looking forward to having me run the district attorney's office and working to put that Family Justice Center to work together with the prosecutors that will prosecute those cases in court. It's not just about community outreach. It's about what happens in the courthouse. That's primarily what our function is, to investigate and prosecute criminal cases. In addition to Shirley Zane and all of the law enforcement officials I've recited, I've been endorsed by 7 of the 9 mayors. These are our civic leaders here in Sonoma County, 31 council members, in addition to a host of others in our community that are coming out to support me, including one of my supervisors who worked as a chief deputy district attorney under the incumbent. She knows what it's like to work in his office, and she's supporting me, though untested, it may be alleged. I'm not the DA in Mendocino County. I can't take credit for everything up there, but I've learned a lot as third in command, and I'm going to take that education with me, and I'm going to bring it back here if I am honored with your support and your vote on June 8th. And I'm going to make this the kind of district attorney's office that I'll be proud of. Don't forget I went to law school to be a prosecutor, and don't forget I'm a citizen of this community. I deserve better. You deserve better. We'll get better if you support me on June 8th. Thank you very much.
That concludes our debate. To learn more about the candidates, you can go to their websites, www.ravitchforda.com and www.passalacqua2010.com. On behalf of the Sonoma County Young Democrats, I want to thank the candidates, the Sonoma County Library and Community Media Center for their time and support. A reminder that tonight's debate will be broadcast on Community Access Channel 26 on April 14th and 21st from 6 to 7:30, and any of you that are interested are welcome to join the Sonoma County Young Democrats mailing list at the back table. Thank you and good night. Likewise.